Well, friends, as you can probably tell, I have finally made it back home to the central coast of California, where I'm currently setting up a really fun little experiment in the back of my car to see just how far we can push car camping food. But it's all in spirit of my dad this week, as he... Don't worry, that sounded really stressful. In spirit of, my dad is doing well. But just yesterday, he went through the major surgery that I've been alluding to that was coming up for a long time here. It's currently mid-October. This video will be going out a little bit later, I think. But for all who are wondering, my dad is doing well. I'll have a little bit bigger of an update later on in the video. But today I figured I would do something on my way up to go see him. I am taking a short break from the hospital and making some pizza out of the back of my car. I'll get into a bigger update in a few minutes, but first let's talk more about the pizza and how I'm gonna be doing this. I did go to the store to get some dough, so it's not completely homemade. I do not have that much time right now, unfortunately, but I'm gonna be using some pre-made dough and then all fresh ingredients otherwise. The dough was sitting on my dash the entire drive out to the coast because I wanted it to get just a little puffier and a little bit bigger, but everything else was in my fridge, which y'all are currently sitting on top of. And none of these ingredients, none of my cold beverages would have been possible without the help of today's sponsor, Bluetti. So before we get into the pizza, let's hear a little bit more about the AC180P and what Bluetti does for me every day on the road, whether I'm cooking pizza or living out here full time. All right, guys, I have something special planned for today because in the past I've always talked about Bluetti in a more theoretical sense, like what could you potentially power? But today I'm going to be talking about very specific appliances that I power every single time that I am on the road, namely my Dometic CFX28 fridge, which is the size, the CFX28 fridge that I have in the Subaru, my cell phone, my laptop, my camera, and my Starlink. Now you guys see me use these every single week, whether I'm working from the road, taking my grad classes, or just powering my fridge for fresh food like today when I'm cooking pizza on a cliffside, which truly could not happen with these types of ingredients unless I had a fridge and power. So without the car being turned on, the only way that I have to power all of my electronics to work, to do school, to make fun meals on the road is my Bluetti, and currently I'm using the AC180P. Now, I cannot do these calculations by hand, so I'm gonna go ahead and overlay a screen here, jump back home, and let's get into some math here. I promise I'm gonna keep it as exciting as I possibly can and make it relevant to you.
All right, so I'm going to break this down by power type. As you can see here, there are a few things that run off of internal batteries and others that need to be plugged in all the time to kick on or run consistently. Here we have Starlink pulling 45 watts when it is fully powered, fully plugged in, and running my internet. So what I'm gonna do is take the overall capacity measured in watt hours of the Bluetti AC180P and divide that by 45 watts. And as you can see here, a very simple calculation, we're gonna end up with 32 hours of run times. So I will have internet powered around the clock for 32 hours straight without having to recharge the Bluetti AC180P. Again, repeating this for the fridge, it's gonna slightly change after we do this calculation, but again, if the fridge were to run around the clock, in theory, we could power it using the same calculation, 1440 watt hours divided by the 63 watts that it requires when it's fully powered on for 22.9 hours. But as I mentioned, the fridge does not actually have to run around the clock. It just needs to cool itself down initially. I usually have it set around 32 or 33 degrees, but once it's at the set temperature, it'll go ahead and kick off until it needs to cool itself down again. This means that my fridge actually stays powered in practice for about 5 to 6 days, which has been awesome for grocery runs back living in an apartment. For the phone, laptop, and camera, I had to measure the battery. This is information that you can find by a quick Google search. My iPhone is the 13 Pro. It has a 3.1 amp hour battery. Now, the 3 amps is actually coming from the Bluetti. That is the output of the USB that I charge it on. And so dividing 3.1 by 3 amps, you're gonna get a 1.03 hour charge time. That is how long it takes for my phone to go from 0 to fully charged or 100% when plugged into this outlet in the Bluetti. So to calculate the amount of charges that you can get from this, you're going to take the amount of power that the iPhone pulls, which is 14 watts when plugged in, times 1.03 hours to get a total of 14.42 watt hours being used in order to fully charge my iPhone. Now that you have things all in one unit, you're going to take 1440, the capacity of the Bluetti AC180P, divide that by the 14.42 watt hours, which is how I get 99 full charges out of a fully charged Bluetti for my iPhone. Now, I know this is kind of complicated and a lot of numbers, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw up the laptop and camera calculations here on the screen now that I've explained how to do it. So that way you, if you'd like, can feel free to replicate this with your own devices. But if this is seeming a little bit overwhelming, and I don't blame you if it is, because it took me a little while to do this myself, don't worry. Blue Buddy actually has an app that you can connect straight to your power station and monitor remotely, and you can download that from the iOS or Android App Store today.
All right, now that all the technical jargon is out of the way, I hope that you guys have a better sense for what you can power on the road using a Blue Buddy AC180P. Again, if you're thinking I need more power, or maybe you don't need quite as much as I do, or you have a smaller space, don't worry, make sure to head to bluebuddy.com to check out their other portable power solutions and PV systems. I currently use the PV350 with mine to find a portable power solution that's going to work for you. And thank you again to Blue Buddy for sponsoring today's video. All of that said, this is my first time using a pizza oven and I'm a little bit nervous about how it's gonna go. So I'm gonna hop back, try to cut up all these ingredients and get this thing fired up as soon as I can so that way I can get back up to the hospital later today. And while I do, I'm gonna tell you all a little bit more about what's been going on with my dad, my family, and what is coming up over the next couple of weeks, because things definitely look and feel a little bit different than normal.
All right, you guys, let's go ahead and do an update. And I am just gonna do this raw stream of consciousness style, but I'm also gonna try to walk a fine line because this is not a health update about myself. Obviously, it's about someone else who I care about very deeply and want to protect their privacy, my dad's privacy. But I know that I have been sharing a bit about moving back to California. Obviously, it's something substantial for me to move halfway across the country and change a lot of things in my life for. And it is a big deal. It's been a really big deal. My dad has been struggling with some health issues over the past few years, some related to TBIs or traumatic brain injuries like concussions, and then others, like more recently with spinal column degeneration that has led to a lot of inflammation and pain and other symptoms that just ended up no longer being manageable. That is why my dad ended up in the hospital. That is why he needed surgery. Essentially, they had to do a 7-level fusion of his spine. They needed to crack open the back, make more space for his spinal column and fluid and nerves and everything that runs up and down our backside, so that way he could go back to living a fuller, more pain-free life. And ultimately, I'm just incredibly grateful that my dad has this opportunity to get such a major part of his life back and to live hopefully pain-free or close to pain-free again, so that way he can get back to doing the things that he loves to do, because I know that the last few years have been very difficult for him. It's been hard to watch, and I'm just so excited for this new lease on life that he is hopefully going to have post-surgery.
All right, guys, might be kind of hard to see, but if you're wondering where the other half of my pizza went, it was a casualty. I noticed that this side was burning, and at that point, it was too late to pull it out and flip it, because this was too cooked and this was too undercooked. So I ended up having to scrap half the pizza, but lesson learned. At least this portion of it, I think, is edible, so let's go ahead and try. We have some spicy, like pizza slash pasta sauce. I typically go for a pasta sauce, not a pizza sauce, because it has more flavor. Mildly undercooked, but this might be one of the coolest things I've ever done in the back of the car. All right, learned a lot of lessons with that pizza. It definitely turned out a lot better than it could have. Two things I did not realize, if y'all end up getting a similar brand, I'm not sponsored or affiliated by them in any way, but just got it from my local Ace Hardware, and this was like the main brand in terms of a more portable option that I could find, so I'll say that much, I guess. If you have questions, you can leave them down in the comments, but just not calling them out specifically. All said, it did work really well. The error was entirely on my part. I didn't realize that this oven was gonna cook a pizza in 60 seconds. That is crazy. And of course, impatient little me did not not wait a full 15 minutes for it to preheat. So next time, preheat it, put a little bit more olive oil on the bottom so that way the pizza will slide off of the stick. I think that was my biggest error, was actually just inserting the handle. Every time without fail that I try to talk an airplane. I'm outside of San Francisco right now, so that's why that's happening. First, more olive oil. Second, preheat the oven. Don't just stick my pizza in there. Don't be impatient. Third, turn it every 10 to 15 seconds. As it was burning and smoking, I read the instructions. Probably do that first, but now I know you're supposed to turn it every 10 to 15 seconds, because if the stone is preheated, that's all that it takes for it to become like non-stick and for the pizza to lift up off of the pizza stone, which now needs to be desperately cleaned because I did not do that, and so there's tomato schmush everywhere. Before I go, I just want to say a few last things. One, thank you so much to everyone in last week's video, I think especially, but now maybe 2 weeks ago, for all of your lovely comments of support and kindness regarding my dad. This has been extremely stressful. He's had some health issues for a few years now, but this felt like things are kind of coming to a head in a more serious way. Surgery is a big deal. When you have to go under, it's always a big deal, but especially a spinal cord surgery is like nothing to really laugh at. And so I just very much appreciate all of your support and understanding as I've had to take my content in a slightly different direction, as I've come back out to California, and as I've made a lot of seemingly drastic life changes really rapidly, not because I necessarily want to keep uprooting and changing and moving my community, but because family is incredibly important to me and it needed to be the priority for the next couple of months. I didn't mention, but people always ask when she's not here. Tara is currently at the dog sitter because for the first 48 hours of my dad being in the hospital, we weren't sure what was going to be needed of us. So the dogs, my parents and Tara, are both in a very safe, very happy place where we get updates regularly throughout the day. I will be picking her up later this afternoon, and she will be in videos to come in the near future. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you again to Bluetti and the AC180P for sponsoring the video, for sponsoring and supporting us having fresh ingredients on the road. Truly such a game changer. So stoked to be consistently working with them and to have their products out here. They're just incredible, and I could not recommend them enough. And you guys know that I don't partner with folks or products that I don't believe in. All of that said, I'm gonna go ahead and pack up. I think this is just about done cooling down, so I'm gonna collapse these legs, roll the bed back out so I can go pick up the dogs in a little while and go see my dad at the hospital. And until next week, I hope that you all have had a wonderful October. Feels like it's been a whirlwind. We're already well into fall and nearing winter, and I can't wait to see you all next week.